Welcome everyone to Amazing Stories. Today we're telling a story about tricks, fake money, and how super smart people from Argentina can be. In a world where money makes the world go round, where we trust a simple piece of paper, there was a man who challenged the system, working from the shadows. He didn't use guns or rob banks. His crime was much sneakier, much more perfect. Imagine how brave, how daring it was to make money bills so real that even experts at the big bank couldn't tell fakes from real ones. His name, Héctor Fernández. Not just any thief. He was an artist who needed everything to be perfect, a forger, and his art was the American dollar. His story is a wild ride, full of amazing talent, a constant battle between art and crime. It was full of sad times when people let him down, and he was very, very lonely. It all started from something that looked so simple, like little chicks dancing on a dusty street in Moron, all the way to money bills that went all over the world without anyone ever guessing they weren't real. Come with me on this amazing trip to find out all about the legend of Héctor Fernández, the guy from Argentina who turned making fake money into a kind of art, but he paid a really big price for being so clever. Get ready to take a peek inside the mind of a master trickster. He's known as one of the best ever at making perfect fake dollars. Héctor Fernández was born in the lively city of Buenos Aires, Argentina, way back in the 1950s, into a family where folks worked hard. Even when he was just a little kid, he was amazing at drawing, using colors, and trying out all sorts of art stuff. It wasn't just something fun to do. For Héctor, art was super interesting, and he was also really curious about how all the art tools and tricks worked. He didn't just want to make pretty pictures, he really wanted to figure out the tricky ways you could make copies of them. Even though his path didn't take him to the classrooms of a fancy art school, Héctor taught himself, and he worked super hard because he really loved it. He dove into books and guides about printing techniques, soaking up all the info on materials, always trying out new things with pigments, all sorts of inks, different kinds of paper, and tricky chemical steps. Getting things just right became his main goal, like he really had to get every single tiny detail perfect. Over time, Fernández got really good at copying tricky pictures. He got really good at things like lithography, screen printing, and offset printing, all of which he taught himself by trying things out and always studying. His technical skills got so good, they matched and even went beyond. A real expert in graphic arts, even though he never went to a special school for it. In the little workshop he built right in his own house, Héctor mixed art and science in a really special way. He designed his own printing plates, and he was super careful about it. He made his own inks, mixing them just right, and he knew all the secrets of engraving like he'd spent his whole life doing it. He always wanted things to be perfect. He couldn't stand even the tiniest mistake, and he never took shortcuts if it meant his work wouldn't be top quality. Even with this amazing talent, Héctor Fernández never got the usual art world fame while he was alive. He was a quiet guy, almost like a hermit. That kept him away from social events and art galleries. He liked the quiet loneliness of his workshop better, where he could really focus on his obsession. His real calling wasn't fame or showing off, but just making things, always trying to make them perfect. People who knew him said he was super smart and paid crazy attention to every little detail. He'd also get super focused on things. If life had gone a different way, his talent could have made him one of Argentina's top art printers, or even someone who fixed up priceless, amazing artworks. But fate, or maybe the choices he made, led him down a totally different path. Getting by with an honest job never seemed to be in Héctor Fernández's plans. In the 1970s, he tried to make a name for himself in downtown Moron. Though he wasn't there for long, he had set up a special stall where he sold what he claimed were dancing chicks. It was quite a sight and caught the eye of people walking by, especially kids. They were amazed to see the little animals seemingly move to the music coming from a nearby tape player. Kids often begged their parents to buy one of these chicks. But the magic would disappear right when the chick got to the buyer's house. You see, the animals would stop dancing, no matter what music was played. But the sad truth behind that show soon came out. Under the small metal table where the chicks danced, Fernández had cleverly hidden a lit torch. The animals weren't dancing wildly to the music at all. It was because of the awful heat coming from the flame. You see, the poor little chicks were jumping around like crazy, trying not to burn their tiny feet. This mean trick was soon found out. It was the first clear sign that Fernández would use tricks just to make money. Around that same time, Héctor also spent his days painting and selling pictures on the street. His artwork wasn't bad at all. Actually, folks who bought his paintings were usually really surprised by the talent this young street artist had. But he soon figured out he could paint something that would make him a lot more money, cash. Héctor always dreamed of having his own little machine to make money. He even joked often, but he wasn't completely kidding, saying that everyone should have their own personal mint. He was really inspired by Victor Lustig, one of the biggest and boldest con artists in history, famous for the story that he sold the Eiffel Tower twice. Fernández found Lustig's story really amazing. It showed how bold and tricky some people could be. We've talked about him in a video before. Fired up by this famous trickster, Héctor started to come up with his very own risky plan. At first, Héctor Fernández started making fake money. It was the money his country used back then. He set up a little workshop, kind of a makeshift lab, right in a room in his house. And from that little room he started printing money. And you know what? For a beginner, his fake bills looked pretty darn good, surprisingly accurate. He didn't get caught because his fake money looked bad. Nope, the bills were actually pretty convincing for back then. His big mistake, the thing that tripped him up, was how he tried to get that fake money out there. He was the one spending the fake bills himself, using them for his everyday shopping. He didn't have much experience with organized crime, and most of all, his desperate need for money eventually gave him away. It wasn't long before the authorities arrested him for the first time. He wasn't arrested by the regular cops, but by the SIDE, the state's intelligence agency. This agency had spotted him buying strange printing supplies, special inks, paper from other countries, and printing machines. This stuff didn't match the business Héctor officially said he had at all. How much money he was spending, and the kinds of supplies he bought made the intelligence services suspicious. The soldiers questioned him and kept him locked up for who knows how long. During that dark time, Fernández was brutally tortured to make him tell his secret, how a regular Joe, just any John Doe, was able to make such amazing fake money. The details on the bills, how real the colors looked, how perfect the size was, and the way the design was copied were almost perfect. How good the fake money was shocked his captors, who found it hard to believe that a guy who seemed to have nothing could be so skilled. They were so surprised the police chief who arrested him offered a twisted deal: avoid jail if he made fake money for them. It was a tempting offer, a way to escape the bad results of his actions. But even though he was desperate, Héctor made a choice most people in his shoes wouldn't have. He chose to face jail instead of sharing his secret for making fake money, or especially working for others. He was arrested without a real trial. His case got lost in secrets and abuse, like many things during Argentina's military rule. Records were changed, files disappeared, truths were buried, and like many others, he was freed a bit later with no clear reasons or a fair trial. Far from stopping his career in making fake money, this first arrest and the rough treatment he got changed him. He became more careful, paid closer attention to things, and in the end, a lot more dangerous. He learned a very important lesson about being careful and why it was important not to work alone. Getting better at his craft and the legend of the superbill. Years later, when Argentina was a democracy again, Héctor Fernández made his fake money skills even better. That awful time when he first got arrested forced him to get smarter and look for ways to do things that were almost impossible to find. He managed to make contacts and build networks that let him spread thousands of fake bills all over South America. Héctor Fernández was turning into a legend in the shady world of making fake money. It was in the 1980s and early 1990s that he became super famous, especially for making fake US dollars. Word on the street was that he used real small bills that he smuggled in. Some even said he got his hands on actual paper money from the US Treasury that had ended up on the black market. Legend has it that Fernández could change these bills so perfectly that what he made was called a super bill back then. It was a fake so good it was almost impossible to tell it wasn't real, no matter how hard anyone looked. In 1987, Fernández was back in business. This time, he was making fake US dollars and also Australes, which was Argentina's money back then, when Raúl Alfonsán was president. The Australes weren't worth much, so other fakers usually didn't bother with them. But funny enough, this made them an easier target for someone as skilled as Fernández. He figured out a really smart way to do it, and get this, it hardly cost him anything. He'd get his hands on real money, you know, small bills, and then he'd carefully use acid to wash all the ink off. Once the paper was clean and it was still real with all its original safety stuff, he'd use it again. On this real blank paper, Fernández would carefully copy the designs of the bigger money bills that people were using. What he made was an amazing trick. The paper was totally real, which made the fake money almost impossible to spot just by looking at it. The usual checks, the ones made to find fake paper money, just didn't work. Because the paper was real, it fooled the old ways of checking. These bills were so believable that when he was finally caught and taken to court for this whole thing, they could only get him for the fake dollars. For the Australes, even Argentina's main bank, the central bank, couldn't prove in court without a doubt that they were fake bills. It was a perfect hit, smooth and wickedly smart, making fake money without faking the paper itself. It was a criminal masterpiece. The artist usually didn't spend much time behind bars. Sentences for making fake money weren't super tough compared to other crimes, and besides, Fernández's whole idea was always about making his art perfect, not about using violence. I never used a weapon, I never killed anyone, but I'd go crazy if the bills didn't come out perfect. I spent 3 sleepless nights trying to get them perfect. I wanted to make them even better than the real ones. The best faker is the one who never gets caught, he said in an interview with the reporter Rodolfo Palacios, which was published on Infobay, showing just how obsessed he was. Back in the early 90s, Héctor Fernández was doing things in a much bigger way. He was part of a gang led by Daniel Bellini, owner of the legendary Pinar de Rocha club, one of the most famous and popular night spots back then in the Buenos Aires province. The gang mostly focused on making fake US dollars. Fernández was the creative mind, the master artist who made the bills with amazing skill, while his partners handled the tough job of getting the fake money out there. The gang had a big plan, and it wasn't just for their own town. They didn't just want to fill Argentina with fake dollars, but they also wanted to get the money out of the country and send it all over the world, all the way to the United States, the home of the money they were so good at copying. To make this happen, Fernández's ways of doing things got more and more fancy and detailed. He used super exact screen printing methods. He got a special machine that could turn paper pulp into money paper that was a lot like the real stuff. And he finished each bill by hand, paying super close attention to every little detail. He put on the bright ink with just the right strength and shade of color. He printed the watermark so it was amazingly clear. He put in the security thread, making it look just like the real one, and he treated the paper with special chemicals so when you touched it you couldn't tell it from a real bill. For the last step, every fake bill went through a fancy machine that checked for fake money. Only the ones that passed this tough test were good enough to be used. This was a really high-quality fake money operation, like a craft done by someone who was almost like an artist, wanting everything to be perfect. For Héctor Fernández, it wasn't just about printing money. It was like he was creating something, trying to make a perfect piece of art that could trick even the best experts. However, the huge ambition and impatience of some of the gang members who were taking orders from their boss, Daniel Bellini, ended up messing up the whole thing. In 1991, the authorities managed to break up the network and arrest its members. Fernández was arrested as a top guy in this gang that was making tons of fake money, which was working in secret, hiding behind the famous Pinar de Rocha nightclub. In the end, the artist was sentenced to 4 years in prison for making a whole bunch of fake dollars in the basement of a house in a northern suburb of Buenos Aires. His talent, once again, had landed him behind bars. After he served his time, Héctor Fernández tried, at least on the surface, to turn his life around. For a while he went back to painting, his original passion. His favorite subjects were women. He painted them with a dedication that was almost like an obsession, trying to capture their spirit with every brushstroke. Besides painting, he took on an unusual and ambitious project, building an ultralight airplane in his backyard. It was a project that showed his restless mind and his constant need to create and push the limits. Years later, when the police tracked him down again for some old trouble, they found this strange plane still being built. Right away, the investigators got suspicious. It didn't take them long to think that Fernández was planning to fly out of the country in that homemade plane, with a suitcase packed with fake dollars. But, just as cool and calm as when he faked money, Héctor gave them an answer that sounded both innocent and pretty unlikely. "I'm building it to go for a ride with my kids." But his obsession with making money, both literally making it and for what it represented, was dragging him without escape into a deep hole. The pull to return to his old craft was just too strong to resist. It was at a money exchange place in Paraguay that a small, odd thing caught the eye of a sharp worker who checked thousands of bills daily. Something about 2 of the bills that went through his hands looked odd to him. After checking more carefully, he found a fatal mistake. Both bills had the exact same serial number. On US dollar bills, the serial number is like a fingerprint, unique and never repeated. If 2 bills have the same numbers, it's definite proof that one or both are fake. Finding this repeated number immediately raised a red flag. Right away they called the local police. In just a few days, other nearby countries also started reporting the same worrying pattern. Dollar bills that were amazingly well made. The printing was perfect, and they felt just right, almost impossible to tell from the real ones if it wasn't for one tiny but super important detail. The serial numbers were repeated. The artist was back at it, and this time one little mistake was going to be his undoing. Héctor Fernández got arrested again, not just once, but 2 more times. This was in 2005 and then again in 2007. After one of these arrests, his personal life completely fell apart. He lost his wife, his kids, his whole family life. His obsession with making perfect fake money pushed his loved ones away. His wife got tired of always seeing him lost in his work, staring at banknotes with a magnifying glass, or lost with his experiments in his workshop. So she gave him a final choice. "Wife, we can't go on like this." He didn't hesitate with his answer, choosing his art over his family. According to what he said later, his wife left him and went off with another man. That's what Rodolfo Palacios says, the journalist who maybe, more than anyone else, came to understand the counterfeiter's complex personality. By then, Héctor Fernández was already a big name in the underworld and in some news circles too. His counterfeiting story had turned him into a kind of urban legend, a fascinating and mysterious guy. Lots of reporters wanted to interview him to find out the secrets of his talent and his obsessive mind, but not many could actually get to him. Until they split up, his wife was the one who answered calls from reporters, always answering with the same sharp line and a really scornful tone. "Wife, why don't you all go interview some good people like firefighters, bakers or nurses?" As the years went by, Fernández started to want something that seemed even harder than making the perfect money: win his family back. He wanted to get back with his wife to see his kids again, but shame and fear of their no just froze him. He didn't dare call. He knew they probably wouldn't take him back, but he kept telling himself, "Héctor Fernández, I have to go back." And in a voice where old memories mixed with the dream of one last big job, he would tell himself. Héctor Fernández, gotta go back and go out with a bang. On May 3rd, 2012, the police arrested him again. This time they found a whole lot of fake money on him, $460,000. And with him, 5 other people were arrested too. Ricardo Casal said, "Yeah, these are top quality bills." That's what Ricardo Casal, who was the security minister of Buenos Aires back then, said at a press conference. He was pretty much admitting how good the fake money was. But once again, the slippery counterfeiter managed to stay out of jail, getting conditional release. But when he got back to his small apartment, he found a terrible betrayal. It would be his last and saddest fall. His girlfriend, while he was in jail, had totally emptied his house. She took his paintings, the few pieces of furniture, and anything else she could sell. Héctor Fernández said, "She didn't even leave me the toilet." Héctor Fernández, the master of tricks, would later complain. He sounded angry, hurt, and like he'd just given up. The man who spent his life making fake money ended up with nothing. The master of fake money, the master of trickery who had tricked the police in many countries, spent his last years being very poor. He wasn't making dollars anymore. To get by, he sold ladies' underwear, men's underwear, and even his own old clothes at flea markets in the once neighborhood in Buenos Aires. He died alone in 2013, far away from the obsession that had made him a legend in the secret world of crime. He never shared the secrets of how he did it, not even when he really needed money. "The secret dies with me," he used to say, and he kept his word, taking his special knowledge with him to the grave. And so ends the amazing and sad story of Héctor Fernández, the man from Argentina who people thought was one of the best and most careful dollar bill copiers ever. Héctor Fernández, the artist who chose the forbidden canvas of the dollar bill, a man who almost reached perfection, going against the law and left behind a story in the books of crime that no one will ever forget. But did he really make it perfect? Are any of his bills still out there in the world that no one has found even today? And besides being so good at making them, what really made this careful maker do it? Was he trying to make perfect art? Or was it like getting back at the system? Or did he just like the thrill of trying to do what seemed impossible, kind of like Icarus flying too close to the sun? His secret died with him, but the questions about his genius and his motivations remain. What do you think of Héctor Fernández's story? Do you believe his talent, perhaps worthy of a modern Leonardo, could have had a different destiny? Do you know other stories about super smart copiers, maybe some local tricksters like Lupin? Leave your comments down below. We're curious to know what you think. And if you found this story as cool as we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss other awesome stories like this one. Good enough for a movie. The legend of Héctor Fernández lives on in the shadows. But how long will his mystery last?